Articles and Thoughts on Vedanta by His Holiness Param Pujya Shri Shri Sachidanandendra Saraswati Mahaswamiji, Adhyatma Prakasha Karyalaya, Horenalsipura. In this, the last chapter or last article or thought, today we are seeing. Next we shall move to next book. So, in this is the last one, 39th chapter. The Vedanta Shastra as the means of the knowledge of Brahman. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Introduction. Vedanta Mimamsa Shastra is one of the two titles assigned by Shankaracharya to Badarayana's energetical work, popularly known by the name of Brahma Sutras. This is because Badarayana proposes to systematize the art of interpreting the Vedantas in that work. In the third and the fourth sutras of that book, Badarayana, interpreted by Shankara, says that Brahman or reality as the cause of the birth, sustentation, and dissolution of the universe is to be known as such only through the source of the Shastra Yonitvat, as is evidenced by the uniform coherence of the texts in all the Upanishads and by the syntactical relation of the words in the texts teaching Brahman, Tattva Samanvayat. What is the attitude of the Vedantins with regard to the Vedantas or Upanishads as a means of the right knowledge of Brahman? And what is the value that might be attached to this knowledge by the thinkers who would undertake a comparative study of the religious and philosophical productions of such ancient writers? I shall try to answer this briefly in this article. Vedanta as a Shastra. Number one. The word Shastra may be regarded either as a sacred work which lays down some injunctions or prohibitions, vidhi, nisheda. Shasti iti shastram. Or that which teaches, shinasti, shiksha, something for that edification of the inquirer after truth. The Vedantas, Shastra means which lays down some vidhi nishedas, injunctions and prohibitions, do's or don'ts, or that which teaches something for that edification of the inquirer after truth. The Vedantas may, with the impunity, be considered as constituting a Shastra in both the senses, because they enjoin certain upasanas, meditations, and also teach the nature of Brahman. Of course, we shall restrict the word to mean a holy word aiming to teach the real nature of Brahman for obvious reasons here, not upasanas here. We will limit to Brahman. What Vedanta is not, that's the second point. What is Vedanta or Vedanta as a Shastra? How we have seen. Now, what Vedanta is not? How is the Vedanta Shastra to be regarded as a trustworthy source of information regarding Brahman? Why you have to believe it is telling the truth about Brahman? In the first place, it has to be noted that the Vedantas, forming as they do an integral position of the Veda as a whole, are not like chapters of a holy book like the Bible or the Quran, nor do they claim to be the utterances or writings of some inspired prophet or prophets. Badrayana specifically falls in with the view of Jaimini regarding the Veda as eternal. Atayeva cha nityatvam. Brahma Sutra 1.3.29. And Shankara quotes a verse from the Rig Veda 10.71.3, which says that the rishis discovered the word Vaiham already existing. not God's spoken word. Third point. Secondly, the eternal Vedas are declared to be transmitted by the Deva, self shining God, to the Brahma or Hiranyagarbha, manifested in the beginning of each kalpa or cycle or srishti, and that it is that God by whose grace one is enlightened with the consciousness of the real self, Atmanabhuti or Atma Buddhi Prakasham, Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So the Vedas should not be considered to be even God's spoken word. It's Atmanabhuti. Next point, fourth one, Brahman without specific features. A. Thirdly, Saguna Brahman, Brahman with qualities or attributes, has been sometimes enjoined in the Vedantas to be meditated upon. As for instance, in the text, all this is verily Brahman, for it is born and is dissolved in and moves in it. So one shall meditate upon it with the peace of mind. Chandogya Upanishad 3.141. And there are other texts which teach that Brahman is devoid of any specific features. Nirguna, Nirupadika, non attributed Brahma, without attributes. How are we to reconcile with these two sets of teaching, whether it is with the attributes or without? Badrayana, according to Shankara, has given his verdict, final verdict, in favor of the later. That is, अरूपवदेव हि तत्प्रधान तत्प्रधानत्वात् अरूपवत् एव हि तत्प्रधानत्वात् प्रधानतया अरूपः अरूपम Brahman is to be regarded as being devoid of all specific features, for texts preaching it to be such specially purport to teach that nature finally, whereas the other set are particular about enjoining meditation. So the description of Brahman found in the Upasana texts are to be taken to be really real only in so far as they are not in conflict with the texts which mainly aim at revealing the true nature of Brahman. So true nature is nirguna, nirupadika, without attributes or qualities. Next, 4b, Samanvaya. Again, even with regard to texts which purport to teach exclusively the nature of Brahman, we should be careful not to commit the mistake of thinking that they are meant to teach Brahman as only subservient to some injunction, some vidhis, for some do's. For we find that the texts in all the Upanishads have uniform coherence, Vakya Samanvaya, in emphatically beginning and ending with revealing this entity alone, without the tinge of connection with any injunction. These words in each text teaching of Brahman have the syntactical relation with the word denoting Brahman alone and never with any word denoting any injunction. And in each case, the whole teaching ends with pointing to some fruit accruing to be experienced immediately out of the knowledge of Brahman. So, even restricting ourselves to the principles of interpretation propounded by the former exegesis, Purvamimamsa, former exegesis, we have to conclude, that's Karma Mimamsa, we have to conclude that Vedantas have the uniform purpose of teaching the nature of Brahman. Fifth point, immediate insight of Brahman. Fifthly, the subject matter of Upanishadic teaching is wisdom of Brahman, or the really real nature of Brahman, or the Atman, the very self of the inquirer as it is, and not some knowledge whose fruit is to be experienced in a future birth or in the other world after death, as is the case with the texts enjoining karma or upasana. This is the most important feature of the Vedantic teaching, this Atman being one eternally present entity. Knowledge pertaining to him has to be judged not merely by the standard of the authority of the sacred word, but also by the immediate insight of the inquirer here and now. Here, the knowledge of Brahmatman is quite unlike that of the not self, whether inside the body or outside. The knowledge of the latter depends on the instrument of knowledge we have to employ, such as the organs of sense or act of the mind. Brahman, on the contrary, being the witnessing self of all these, can never be perceived or conceived or even inferred on the strength of some perception or conception. The Vedantas, therefore, appeal to another means more immediate than either of these and demand from the enquirer quite another process of inward effort before the before he becomes aware of reality, which is his inalienable self. So, it demand from the enquirer quite another process of inward effort before he becomes aware of reality, which is his inalienable self. Alien means other. This is inalienable, inseparable, non separable self, Atma or Brahma. So, that ends this book, Articles and Thoughts on Vedanta. This is the 15th English book we have been studying. Next, 16th, we shall move in the next session. Hare Rama. Sadguru Charanarpitamastu. Shri 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 Sachidanandendra Saraswati Charanarvindarapitamastu. Shankararpitamastu. Badarayanaarpitamastu. Om Tat Sat. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokas Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Sajjana Santu Nirbhayaha. The next book we are going to see is the 16th one, Gita Sadhana Sopana, Steps to Self Realization as taught in the Bhagavad Gita by Shri Shri Swami Atmanandendra Saraswati, who is disciple of Shri 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 Sachidanandendra Saraswati Swamiji, Holinnarsipur. So, that we shall see in the next session. Om Tat Sat. Krishna Arpanamastu.